Thanks everyone for coming out today. My name is Shauna Heller. I'm the founder of Clay Park VR. I work as a virtual reality executive strategist and advisor for Fortune 500 companies and for also developers doing some really great cutting edge work in VR. I come to this position pretty honestly. I spent a year and a half at Oculus as their developer relations specialist in charge of non-gaming, non-entertainment VR applications. So that included a lot of things like arts and culture and automotive and aerospace and architecture, and then education, enterprise, health, theme parks, and themed entertainment. So I kind of ran the gamut of that. And during that time, I learned a lot about how people were interested in using VR in the enterprise, in the education, and in the medicine space. And because at a conference like this, you kind of have people who are coming to kick the tires on VR and people who are active developers, I kind of target this sort of presentation as somewhere in the middle. If you've got some questions about VR, hopefully this will answer some, or you wanted to validate some thinking that you already had, this is what it's aimed at. So some of it will seem very basic to some of you, and some of it might seem, hopefully a little helpful to the rest of you. So, virtual reality's true potential, I think we can all agree now, especially in at a conference like this where we see that VR and AR have this capability of being so much more than just games, right, and just for entertainment purposes. Virtual reality has a potential for it for just so much more impact on society and the world and just even on a personal level. And for me personally, virtual reality is all about being able to do the 3 S's, which is solve problems, share knowledge, and save lives. So solving problems, obviously, that addresses enterprise. We have a lot of issues in the enterprise space everywhere from logistics to data visualization to consumer communication and product communication. And then over to sharing knowledge, well, we know that's all code for education, right? How do we share knowledge? How do we transfer knowledge from one person to another, from a student to a teacher, from a student to a student? It's really super, super important. And the fact that virtual reality does an exceptional job of that. And then, of course, saving lives. How are we going to use virtual reality to save people from training accidents at work? How are we going to save them from accidents at home, in hospitals? These are the areas where virtual reality really becomes supercharged, right? There are always going to be games. There are always going to be ways to entertain with it. But how do we really impact people on a daily basis, on maybe even an hourly basis? So I think we're all kind of excited about this graph, and it's actually changed a little bit, but that you can see that video games, represent a really big, section of this. But you see where engineering, healthcare, education, and real estate and retail are all going to play a major role in the evolution of VR as well. And this is a pretty well-known graph from Goldman Sachs. You can do a quick Google search for it. It pops up just as easily. But every VC firm, every investment company, they all are putting out every month, it seems, some new documentation and information about how this is going to skyrocket. But again, to me, it was really important to see how they had sectioned out different areas within the enterprise and healthcare space and education. And honestly, I think that they are undervaluing the education space tremendously. And again, it's not because everyone is rushing into the education system right now. It's because the potential is there. And I always point to the example of when I was young, and I'm dating myself a little bit here, but when I was young, the first computer that came into our school, it was one computer, and it was on the art cart, and the art teacher was in charge of wheeling it around from room to room. And then the next year, there were 2 computers, and they were in one closet at the back of the in the art room. So year over year, that began to grow and grow exponentially until by the time I graduated from 8th grade, we had actually at the time, state-of-the-art computer lab that had 35 computers, I want to say, and they were all dot matrix. I was, shifty samming it with everybody, but it was early days in the beginning, and we're going to see the same thing happen with VR, right? You have to start somewhere, a headset here, a mobile headset there, and a lot of things have to catch up to it. But people are undervalued. They're thinking about education in VR now instead of looking at where we're going to be 10 years from now. Okay, so using VR to solve some problems in enterprise. If you are here, you're probably exploring VR and more importantly AR. And the opportunities are pretty aware. You walk around on the conference floor and you can see all these great different exhibitions of people using AR to read gauges and whatnot. And that isn't too different from the opportunities that VR offer as well in enterprise. You've got new employee training. You have environmental simulations to get people used to a training environment or a work environment that they may go into that they're unfamiliar with. And visualizations, of course, for logistics and supply chain. People are accustomed to hearing about visualizations for design review and whatnot, but I've seen some interesting development in using visualizations for logistics and supply chain, because when you look at supply chain, you really are talking about a global scale here, and a lot of people, when they're just learning and you're trying to get buy-off from your executives, they have a hard time picturing how the impact of one decision on a product line or some sort of launch has on the global supply chain. And so they're starting to use VR to show you kind of the world view on that. So I've really enjoyed the development in that area. Of course, 3D design review and using multiplayer collaboration tools. The last presenter, was discussing that a little bit. And it's really an exciting area. You'll see car companies out there in the design industry or the design department of a car industry. They're bringing together engineers and product or industrial designers from different offices to work in a collaborative space in VR. Right now, they're working on it, and it's super, super exciting. Then, of course, in enterprise, still you have product education, demonstration, and training. And that is a really interesting use case where you have maybe a very large, complex product that a customer is going to be spending multiple millions of dollars on. Think of it as something as opposed to like a car, but perhaps a tractor or an expensive piece of medical equipment. And all of this medical equipment or the car, they've all been built in 3D. So how do we take those assets and then from those assets create a demonstration for the people purchasing that product? And even though some people will use it for just VR as, kind of like an ad or a marketing piece where, hey, this is what our shampoo bottle looks like in VR and we're going to spin it past your head and maybe give you sim sickness. Really, the value here is being able to say, hey, you're about to spend $10 million on a piece of equipment with us. We want to make sure that you have a very robust understanding of how this piece of equipment works and the inner workings of it and how you can solve it if some of the components go bad, and use it that way. So then, of course, good old marketing. From complex products to the basics, we see how VR is kind of skyrocketing in the marketing space. And I think what's really interesting about that is when we kind of transcend the normal marketing experience where you're just being sold a product and you're really being taken through VR on a journey through that product story. It goes back to some basic storytelling. So just a brief overview, that is how we're solving some of the problems in enterprise using VR. And then next up, we think about how we might be able to share knowledge or transfer knowledge in VR, and that is VR in education. And this in particular is near and dear to my heart. So in education, the opportunities are very simple. There is turning students into the creators themselves, and then turning teachers into experience guides. We're in this age of information, and really the more time I spend here, it really is becoming the age of experience. And it's really exciting and inviting teachers and students to work together to build and create the experiences that are going to teach them along the way. A big piece of advice here for people looking to get put VR in educational environments is to launch a small pilot program. I know it seems basic, but people forget this over and over again, and they'll pull me into these big, complex conversations about how they're going to build out this giant ecosystem for delivering VR content for education. And I'm like, you know what? Let's start kind of small. I'm seeing a lot of success with small pilot programs, and it's just really important, whether you're thinking about 360 content or whether you're thinking about virtual content or game engine driven. It's really important to think small, or actually, think big and then execute small. Try something, learn a lot from it, fail, and then start coming up with some new ways to approach your next pilot program. And then just good news on the education front is that we have some expanding high-profile initiatives. Google did a great job with Expeditions, taking VR into classrooms in this last 12 months. And then Oculus and Facebook actually just recently launched VR for Good, and they actually, I was a partner on that program, am a partner on that program, and that was taking 360 headset, the Gear VR 360 headsets and 360 cameras into 9 Bay Area schools to turn high schoolers into 360 storytellers. And so that's a really great high-profile initiative to welcome students into the world of VR and 360 by becoming creators and not just consumers. Then, of course, a great idea also is partnering with a hardware and software maker to create content. There is practically no content for education. And it's going to take a long time to figure out how curriculums work and how this will translate over to VR. So it's not like anyone should be in a rush, but I think it'd be a great opportunity for the hardware and software makers to create content with sponsors and sponsorships. But that's kind of a whole other track. So VR in education, now you've had a glimpse. And then the last way that I'm looking at VR is being able to save lives. And this would be VR in medicine. So the opportunities, again, if you were here for that last presentation, that was really terrific. There are definitely companies out there working on VR and in the medical space. And the opportunities are pretty simple. It's training doctors in remote locations and doing procedure simulations, doctor performance optimization, surgery pre-visualization, enhanced imaging, and using it for therapy, and the therapy being like distraction therapy, aversion therapy, or trauma therapy. And for training doctors in remote locations, we have a great conversation that I'm involved in with a doctor who is a specialist in cosmetic surgery over in a very specific, for a very specific procedure. And she is finding that medical students are coming to her right out of school and they have no experience in this particular procedure. So how can we train doctors in some of these niche procedures when there is just not enough medical training in the schools anymore? So we're looking at doing the VR simulations to be able to accomplish the teaching that can't go on in the classroom anymore, and diagramming out the whole architecture behind it to turn it into more of a serious game that can then empower students to go out in the field after they're finished with their medical school and have a lot more practical, even though it is virtual, experience. And for doctor performance optimization, I always like to point to people that we're spending millions and millions of dollars on athlete optimization and their performance. We send them off to the Olympics with millions of dollars behind them. But why aren't we doing this for physicians? You know, this watch one, do one, teach one. You know, it really is a matter of 10,000 hours. How do we get our doctors to be absolutely excelling in their specialty? And one of the really great areas where we can do this is with training and simulation. And that has been going on in time. But now with VR, we can take it into kind of really ratchet up into a level where we can optimize those performances that the doctors provide and deliver that 10,000 hours of experience much more rapidly and in small niche procedure areas that are underdeveloped. And okay, we're down to our final minute here. And this is it, sorry, tips for bringing immersive technology to your organization at Oculus. And since I've left Oculus, I've spent a lot of time sitting down with people who just need to kind of wrap their heads around how to bring this technology in and how to bring in AR as well. And I just always tell people, relax. You know, just relax. It's going to be okay. You need to investigate existing pain points that VR and AR can solve. When technology goes looking for a problem, nothing good comes of it. But when problems look to technology for a solution, that's when really magical things happen and a lot of the roadblocks come away. So then have patience. This is a satchel cell phone, or we're in the satchel cell phone phase. You know, it weighs like 40 pounds. And it's just in the infancy, but it is important to get in there and start working on something. So think big, execute small, try a pilot, and gather learnings. The joke with me is it's a beta. Like, hey, it's okay to fail. And it's really less painful if you just start small, and then the pain point becomes a little bit less noticeable. So aim for data, not for revenue right now. I know there are a lot of people out there gunning for, you know, their billion-dollar idea, and there are them. They exist, but also right now it's super, super important that we start gathering data. So business models will evolve, just wait and see. Focus on VR or AR, trying to accomplish both in one fell swoop is exhausting for everybody involved, from the executives that you're trying to help understand what the technology is all about, to the content creators trying to help you launch that first app. So if you want to do something in AR, fantastic, congratulations. There's a lot of wonderful things that you can or have use cases for in AR, and if you want to do something in VR, also fantastic. But trying to do both at the same time can be challenging, and then it can lead sometimes to a frustration level that turns off executives who are willing to turn on the faucets in other areas for research and development. So that's a little bit, and then if applicable, look for grant and funding opportunities for research. The government's looking at ways to start spending money on research in VR and in AR to find out how effective it can be in different scenarios, whether it's corporate, institutional, and in education and science and medicine. So look for those opportunities and then use those grant dollars to fund good content creation and look for experts that can help you deliver on that. Thank you all very much. I appreciate your time this afternoon. Have a great show.